Okay, so our meditation today is guided by request. This is an interesting proposition for me because I feel like this aspect of the practice gets pretty particular, and that, and I'm just admitting people into the class, so pardon me in terms of if you see me leaning forward, that's all that's happening. At the outset, and I can already see just from my screen that at least one person has made their way onto their back, which I say, mwah, bravo to that. That's great. That's exactly what we want to bring to it. Hey, Deb, welcome, welcome. You are going to be in whatever position. You did hear that someone was on their back, and you can be, each and every one of you can be on your back. You could be sitting as like I'm sitting on a block. You could be standing, you could be balancing on one hand. It really doesn't matter. Truly, for our practice today, comfort is the best thing. I don't think that there's any aspect of what we're doing that really demands that you're sitting or whatever. All I would say is if you are lying down, good habit or good sort of strategy is to put your fingers up in the air. Like if your arms are down, sleep becomes more possible by bringing your fingers up in the air. So if you were, lying like this, then you'll actually feel things start to move, and it'll wake you before you fall asleep. There you go. Tip. Yeah, so just get comfortable. So about guided meditation, this is, I feel like that when we talk about any sort of practice, that very quickly, like when we're all beginners to anything, it could be meditation, it could be yoga, it could be cooking, it could be like windsurfing, it doesn't, it could be changing a diaper, it doesn't really matter what it is we're talking about. We get into these patterns, right? We tend to get into a particular way of seeing our world and say that this is the way that we do this thing. And I'm certainly as guilty of this habit as anyone because I'm a human being, and this is how this is part of the operating manual. Our brains are constantly looking for ways to cheat, to create little shortcuts that we call habits, so that we don't have to think too hard. You just kind of operate in autopilot. Why do I bring this up? Well, because I think also because we get set in our patterns, we tend to have sometimes visceral, strong reactions to the patterns that we are comfortable with being upset. So if I say that meditation is going to be 60 minutes of silence and you're used to a guided meditation, there's a moment of freak out, right? It's like, no, I couldn't be silent for 60 minutes. And by the same token, if someone is, all about silence and I say it's going to be a guided meditation, no, I need, So I guess what I would say is, let's let go of the no. It's okay. Maybe you're trying something with a little bit more talking today, although even in this being a guided meditation, there will be pauses. I'll take my time and try to give you a moment or two at each little stop along the way so that you can kind of just check things out. But I brought this up also in part, not just to say like, it's okay if it feels a little different or a little weird. The other thing I wanted to point out around this is that there's nothing inherently anti-meditative about talking. So, and I actually was introduced to this through the work of Sam Harris, he's got a meditation app and a meditation teacher, and I don't know if I'd say I'm a fanboy exactly. Certainly not of all of his work, but certainly his meditation stuff, awesome, amazing. Really like awesome stuff. And he has fielded a lot of, I guess, kind of meditative complaints from people that his meditations, there's a lot of what I'm doing now, a lot of talking. There's nothing, he makes the point, and I think it's a good one, there's nothing inherently anti-meditative about talking. Meditation it's not just a mind state, it's a way of being. So I think that if your goal is to be a good meditator, okay. If your goal is to take the stuff that we're doing and to, take it off and way out into your lives, that's the real juice, right? Like that's where it's really at. So if the words in the guidance distract you, know that you can truly still be sitting in silence just by doing your own thing. Okay? Now, I had also mentioned last week, I think I had said that it was going to be a guided meditation. I do a body scan. I'm not going to do that. It's because I like messing with it. No, actually, for a very good reason. I genuinely think on a fundamental level that somatic connection, like us feeling integrated mind and body, not treating them as different separate entities because they're not, is powerful and important, and it's a core part of this practice for me. But I also respect the fact that for many, many people, and I remember this even from my training when I was learning to deepen my practice and to teach yoga and meditation, that focusing on particular parts of our physical body can be triggering, can be just stir a lot of things up, particularly if we maybe have an adversarial relationship with our bodies at times. Like, this is my bad knee, not my good knee, it's my bad one. Or this is this other thing I'm dealing with and I'm kind of putting up with. Or it's unprocessed or processed trauma, right? So there's lots of good reasons that people would not be comfortable with that. And I'm going to guide you toward a body scan, but this is not a body scan. And instead, we're going to do sort of a larger perceptual scan today, okay? So we're gonna take things out. You might think of this as the outside-in meditation, okay? Because I'm gonna guide you, and we're gonna move progressively through our external environment, and then collapse it back down towards ourselves, okay? And if you're wondering why all this talk, why all this pattern to begin with, I like to have a roadmap. Now, a roadmap doesn't mean that we're locked into it, but it's at least, when I'm taking a class, I like to know where is the teacher taking us? What's the goal? And so that's it. I'm gonna offer this guided meditation. It's a little bit, it's not a body scan, it's an external scan, and we'll just see how it goes. So what I'm hoping is two things. Is that on one level, and you might think of this as being like a teeny little flag that you just kind of like plant as you're moving through without going down a line of thought, like without getting trapped in a story, okay? So if there are particular points of focus, particular spaces or places that we end up resting our awareness, and you dig that space, plant a flag. That's just like, all right, this is a place that I like to go, or that my mind feels, whatever it is that you are looking to feel. Might be relaxation, it might be it's just really interesting, it might be challenging, whatever it is, I'll leave that to you, okay? And that's the kind of thing where at the end of the practice say like, oh yeah, that spot right there, there's something there. I'm gonna check that out, okay? And so then really we're approaching this with a sense of openness and play and curiosity for what's gonna happen, okay? Enough about all that, there's the setup. Let yourself be comfortable, and today, I should also say as I reach for my tea, today there will be a little bit of movement, and just like speech, I don't think that movement is inherently anti-meditative, okay? Know that everything's optional, so feel free to, just admitting some latecomers, oop, come on you. There we go. So know that, my train of thought, where was it? Help me out. What was I saying there, everyone? Speaking of mindfulness. No worries. Okay, if the train... there it is. Thank you, movement. So there will be a few little movements. Thank you. That you can do or not. Okay, everything is optional. We're gonna start though with our eyes open today. Okay, your screen absolutely, if you don't like the idea of me peering in, can be muted. Okay, you'll be able to hear. I'd ask if your mic isn't muted at this point, maybe mute that just in case there are any environmental disturbances. But know that you can either, if there's something that really emerges from, you can certainly shout out or catch me at the end. Okay, I'll definitely leave some time at the end to chit chat about it. Okay, so getting comfortable, letting all of that prelim go. And eyes, you can see I actually started into closing my eyes. Eyes are open. Okay, as long as that's not uncomfortable. And what I'm going to ask you to do to start is to take your eyes down slightly toward the tip of your nose, but not keeping it there if it's uncomfortable. Instead, you might just kind of cast just beyond. So I'm not actually like crossing my eyes in there. That's hard to hold. Without crossing my eyes, I'm just bringing my gaze to about here. Just like a couple inches in front of my nose. And in doing so, I'm letting everything else around get fuzzy. Or not. It'll be whatever it's going to be, but I'm just focused on what's right here. Just this empty space right down off the tip of my nose. And that's the only thing I need to worry about right now. Or not even worry. That's it. That's where we're going to be. What's happening right there? Just noticing in this most intimate of places, in a sense. This is a place that's always, it's right there with us. Unless we close our eyes, it's there staring us in the face, even though we're often not looking at it directly. We're looking through it, looking out into the world. Your eyes may want to track and move, and our brains get bored. They want novelty. So notice the tendency for your eyes to want to shift and move on their own, as if there's something else controlling them. That's okay. Welcome to being a human being. Okay, now we're going to shift our gaze out a little bit. And the way we're going to do that is by raising one hand, it doesn't matter which one, and taking a finger. I'll leave that to you to decide politely. And turn the finger back toward yourself. And just gaze at the end of that pointing finger. So now we've introduced an element of, maybe not opposition, but we've created this illusion of space between the end of the finger and you. And I say illusion because the distinction is kind of, it exists in our mind, like we are looking out, but in a way, the tip of your finger is also kind of looking in. What's it looking at? Not with eyes, but if there were eyes there, what's it seeing? Seeing your face, seeing what's behind you, which again, unless you were to look into your camera, is inaccessible. Just notice what you notice here. If your arm is tired, certainly you can prop it up, or you can shift. So in meditation, sometimes we'll talk about one-pointedness, like the idea of shaping our focus so that truly nothing exists but that one point, whatever it is you're looking at. Here we get it literally, the point of your finger. Okay, now let's change it up, and in changing it, not just making the change, but noticing how our perception of the world changes with this little move. Simply turn your arm so that you're pointing out and still looking to the end of your finger. But noticing now, and I'm extending my arm just because it's more comfortable, noticing now how it's almost, at least for the eyes I'm looking through, inescapable not to see more than I did here. Here, much easier to focus, pointing out, the feeling of the world beginning to rush in. And now you can drop your arm gently and just maintain that gaze roughly where you were, sort of thinking here of near middle distance. just a few feet in front. And not picking anything about your larger environment up too much. Just setting the boundaries in a sense of what's right here, here. Okay. And you notice, and if you're seeing me, it may be because I'm in your middle distance. And if you're not, what I'm doing is like almost with my hands, like I'm holding a large ball. That's the circumference, like a beach ball in front of me. That's the circumference of my gaze. Sure, I can see things out beyond, but I'm just here. Worth noting here is that if you have the normal sort of hindrances of a meditative practice, the itches, the distractions, the random thoughts, all of that stuff, it's just one moment and you wake up. You notice that it's happening and you say, that's okay. I got lost, but here I am, middle distance, seeing what's happening. Okay. So now we're going to zoom out. Zoom big. You can even sort of actually make your eyes big. And this works if you're laying down too, because now you've got the ceiling, right? But however you're situated, notice that even that simple little move, just moving the eyelids up a little bit, and how that tends to draw your gaze with it. And rather than fighting the things that are coming into the periphery of your attention, think of this as an opportunity to focus wide. So this is the polar opposite of the fingertip. Now, big picture. It's not simply a matter of inhabiting this space, like you're just here as some sort of like docile observer. Okay, I say docile because like the guided thing, it's wonderful. It's a way of avoiding drifting, to have someone else suggest now here, right? That's a good thing. But notice without trying, so without too much, what I often will refer to efforting, like the idea of like really engaging yourself with a goal in mind. Instead, open up to the expanse of your world as it exists right now, the world that you can literally discern in front of you with your open eyes. And nothing more. Not what you think you know, not what you've experienced before or anticipate, just this. And I would suggest to you that no matter how small a space you might be contained in right now, I suspect that we're all zooming here, so we're not likely coming from like the open expanse of the prairies or anything. But just notice how much there is to notice. Maybe noticing things in your immediate environment that you don't take notice of. Your sort of perceptual, web, if you will, or filter just takes out. You don't notice. Literally one of the very first things that hit my consciousness as soon as I opened my eyes wide was a dying leaf on a plant that's just off to the side. I walk by this plant 20 times a day. It has clearly been dying for some time. And I must have seen it. But I wasn't aware. So be aware. Be curious. So we're like embodying, in a sense, openness to whatever happens. I'm not particularly pleased to see a dying leaf. I love that plant. That's okay. But at least I'm noticing it. So there, with this big picture, I'm not going to go like zoom in to the macro of like what's happening, and I'm not going to pick up the worries. It's just, there's this and this and this. It's all here. It's all happening. Okay, final zoom out, and this one's tricky. Can you take your attention right out to the rim, to the, you might actually notice here that it's almost like one big eye, okay? Like in the sense that there isn't a delineation between this is what my right eye is seeing, this is what my left eye is seeing. It's just there. It's this open, round sphere. And if you don't buy what I'm saying, check it out. Take your eyes up to the edge. See where things disappear. What's the last thing you can see? Or maybe out to one side. Or out to the other. Or globally, what's happening way out at the extremes, letting go of what's in this middle distance, this immediate space. How does your experience of your visual field change when you attempt to live at the margins? See, for me, this takes a lot more concentration, a lot more sort of, not effort exactly, but being deliberate about not just zipping back into here. Instead, it's out. Okay, good. Last one. Now, allow your eyes to close. Notice that seeing doesn't stop. What do you see? Not what do you think, not what do you hear, just what do you see right now? It's almost certainly not pitch black. Do you see shapes? Do you see flashes of more or less, shadow and color? Where are the edges of this visual landscape? If, without opening your eyes, you, sort of as a metaphor, opened wider within that visual landscape of closed eyes, where does it end? What do you see? Is it always like this with eyes closed, or is this particular to right now? Maybe this is just today. See, there's wisdom in there. I know that this sounds like a small thing, but it's a metaphor of sorts for much larger things. If we can take notice of that leaf, of what's going on behind closed eyes, and we can discern how that fits into our own little slice of the universe, we gain insight, we gain perspective, we gain space. We get time to respond to what we're seeing intelligently, not reactively. Okay, now I'm going to open my eyes, just because although I am trying to be be a whiz meditation teacher, I will need to occasionally just check in with where I'm going in my little plan. We're going to move through from sight now into sound. So your eyes can remain closed, certainly, and you might find that easier just from the standpoint of not having visual stimuli compete with auditory, but it's up to you, okay? I'm going to throw in some sound. And as I said, I was hoping for a drum beat. This is not that. It's actually like kind of stereotypical yoga music, which is why I don't care for it all that much, but it gives us a target. And that's brilliant. I set this little clip of music up by noting my own judgment, my own sort of inherent discomfort with it. And then just in sitting and listening to it, it gets interesting. I hadn't noticed that before. And then I put the phone down and it continues to play even though I stopped it, as if to say, I'm not done with you yet. And there's something there too. Okay, so you can let go, obviously, of that sound, just the sound of my voice. The observation is this. It's that sound often feels like it's happening to us. Like, in other words, it's not something we need to make much effort at all at. The effort or the tendency to want to control our experience of sound comes, in fact, with that judgment that I referred to. Our mind's inherent tendency to label some sounds as melodious, as harmonious, as pleasant, just like, yeah, more of that, and others as even deeply disturbing, okay? Often these sounds are context specific. So although my voice will be one sound in the soundscape of this next part of our little meditative journey, can you notice what's happening in your environment? Can you pick one spot in your situation? Maybe let's start, as we did with sight, somewhere close by. Something that you can pick up. It might be a repeating sound, like the hum of an appliance. It might be a novel sound, a bird song, or in my case, my dog who is trying to get my attention, knowing that I'm meditating. That's okay. In fact, as much as you're able to, can you drop what I just did, which is labeling? Oh, it's this. Oh, it's that. Instead, open to the experience of just the raw data, the sound coming in. Without trying to categorize it or name it, how would you describe it? not even as fancy-pantsy as the pitch or the timbre or anything like that, but just close or far, stable or erratic. Okay. And now, let's direct our attention actively around sound. So, can you take your focus and move it from sort of just in your immediate vicinity, move it away? What's happening up in the corner of your room? I mean, I think that for many of us, the same way that our sight tends to be at eye level, the sound tends to be at ear level, so we're kind of talking about right here. Instead, and you don't have to move your head, you don't have to move your gaze, you don't have to do anything at all except to tune in to hear what's happening out of this parallel, what's happening down low, or what's happening up high, or what's happening way off to the side. Our minds tend to pick up whatever is loudest or most novel. So like I say, I keep getting pulled perceptually into the sound of my dogs in the next room, playing with their toy, fussing around with each other, click-clacking, trying to get my attention. But if I can not distract myself, but instead come over to the other side, I hear the hum of a furnace. I hear leaves hitting the window. And I hear the dog. So when we play with sound, because it's so variable, a flexible sort of awareness is often the way to go. Although I'll offer this now out as an alternative. One of the kind of cool practices that I've picked up along the way from teachers of mine, one suggestion that I've always really valued is this. Can you take your attention to sound and move it right behind your head? So right back here, sort of 6 inches behind your ears. And unless you're leaning into someone or something, you've likely picked up the sound of silence, which is a sound of sorts. What does silence sound like? Is this a place that you could put your attention at other times? A way of resetting if you're feeling overwhelmed by all of the other sounds, all of the other stimulus. As a way of dropping back. It might be volume from another mic. Notice the intrusion. Come back to behind your head. Okay, so now whoever that was, the mic just muted, and that's okay. You'll notice I didn't ask for it to be muted. I'm not asking for it to be turned back on either, that's okay. But teachable moment there. How did it feel to be pulled out of the silence from behind your head? Go on back there now. It's almost like sound being done to us. But really, again, I'm going to go back to that low hum that I was missing in my background of the furnace. It was always there. I just wasn't attending. So it really is like that koan about, a tree falling in the forest, and if, does it make a sound if there's no one else to hear it? To some extent, you and me and all of us, we shape our own perceptual world. Okay, now we're going to let go of sound. And we're going to move toward the feels. Now, that's the outside part of the meditation, but we're not going to move quite inside quite yet. Instead, and this really is easier to accomplish with eyes that are closed. I don't know why I take my glasses off as I close my eyes. It just feels more natural. All right, but get yourself comfortable. If you need to reset your position at all, or if you've lost track, come on back in. And then allow your perception of this moment go to the place where you stop and the outside world begins. So it's like that place where the air is hitting your skin. You could also think of it the other way, where the world ends and where you begin. Now, without the benefit of a mental map, without a sense of where our body is in space, with the aid of our eyes, and at times the aid of our ears, just feel what it feels like to be this sort of blurry edged boundaried body in space. Depending on what your posture looks like, what your body is shaped like, you'll intuitively know, oh, my body is here, but my body is not there. How do you know that exactly? Without seeing, without knowing. So your play here is to pick up feeling. Notice that when we start to really drill down here into what's happening, that line of division between outside and inside, pretty arbitrary. Of course, the ancients that have been practicing meditation for millennia, they knew this intuitively. Science has shown it in some ways even more definitively. We are mostly space. Most of what we feel and see and hear and perceive as being solid and full of mass is really, a lot of it is empty space. If your view gets small enough. If you go way, way, way zoomed in. But just with eyes closed and feeling your relationship, you can even try this, like lift your arms up a little bit. Feel them in space without seeing. Or turn your head to one side or the other. And just perceive what's going on. Maybe as a way into your body, my sternum gave me a little crack there as I turned. So it begins to tie together our experience of the external environment and everything that's going on in here. And now allow yourself to drop maybe a little bit further into bodily sensation. Same habit of mind that I had suggested with sound. Don't label it, don't name it, just feel it. In our patterns, we tend to very mindlessly identify certain sensations, certain bits of feedback from our environment, internally or externally, as being something that's pleasant, we want to bring it close to us. As something that's unpleasant, we want to push it away. As something we can't figure out, it confuses us, and we're like, I don't know what to do with this. But what is your experience of physical sensation when you drop all of that chatter? If it helps to pick a particular point in your body, like your pinky toe or your right knee, or the feeling of your breath entering through the tip of your nose, whatever it is, feel free to pick that up. Or stay more open, more holistic. Now, and without committing to it, like without feeling like you're chaining yourself to it, notice if there's any emotional tone happening right now. Are you feeling a particular way? Notice I didn't ask if you are angry or you are happy or joyful or sad or grieving or any of those other things, because you're not any of those things, right? All of those things, all of those wonderful things, all of those challenging things that are inherent to the experience of being human are also, on a more basic level, simply shifting patterns of energy. This feels like that. I label this flow of sensations as equating to whatever it is. And once we kind of back the perceptual truck up, and with the, kind of a new eyes, or beginner's mind, I guess would be the meditative way of saying it, can maybe reorient and change the shape of our perception, the way we are framing our world. Okay, last point, draw way deep. What feels like, and this is, we're imagining here, right? Imagine that you are going right to the very center of your being, equidistant to all other points, just right in the middle. Were you aware of that point 15 seconds ago? What are you aware of now? Experience much of anything separate from our awareness of the thing and the awareness of our awareness. Take a nice deep breath in through the nose if you can, out through the lips if you wish. Sigh it out. Eyes can gently open up. Allow the room to come back in. And notice how you feel. Okay, and here we are, out the other side. So there is guided meditation, my friends, or at least there is a guided meditation. Questions, comments, anything and everything that you would like to talk about. I'm all ears. I am just going to pause the video, the other one that is taking the recording of this. So those of you who are taking this in on the interweb later, be well.